We have been married 42 years. Next year will be 43, which
sense.
often comes after 42.
Yep.
And we have 4 children, 4 grown children. But I could give you a general area of their ages, but I don't know their exact
And in
age.
his defense, I knew you were going to ask that, so I did take pen to paper to figure it out. Our oldest, Abby, is 38.
Wow, she's old.
Lydia is 37. Ben is 33, soon to be 34. And Simeon is 31.
We must be getting older.
Is that right?
We have, of our youngest child is 31 year old.
So Abby has 3 kids, married to Ian. Lydia has 2 boys. Ben has 2. Simeon has 2. Yeah. We noticed that with so much information for your generation that there's a lot of analyzing that goes on and preparing and studying, and we didn't have all that available to us. You just kind of jumped in and had kids and started a family. There wasn't a lot of overthinking of the process. You just kind of...
No, and it was an expectation, I think. I think both of us had talked about it at great length, and that was just our desire, was to have kids. And we had been married for 4 years, and we kind of thought, you know what, this is about good time. We spent a lot of time together. We had both started careers, and we had had some fun and went on vacations, traveled to Europe. And we really thought, you know what, we're ready for this. This is kind of what we were always planning and hoping and preparing for. And I can't say we were planning on 4.
No.
I think I thought 2, she thought 3, we had 4. So, and we can't imagine our family without 4. Sometimes Beth will say, boy, can you imagine who we could have had? But
I always wonder that.
This seems right.
Yeah.
2 girls, 2 boys.
Yeah.
It's an even number for a roller coaster ride or anything like that.
And I think for us, it was a traditional timeline. Go to college, get married, spend a few years together, start a family. Well, at the time, we were also looking into going into seminary full-time. So I think for us, moving even further from family, and then the financial aspect of going to school full-time and how was that going to work, I think most of them, some of the fears and doubts were financially related because on paper it just looked like a really stupid thing to do. And we really kind of stepped out in faith, and it was great. Everything we were provided for. But I think at the front end of all that, we were definitely...
Yeah, we often forget it, but it's an incredible testimony of God's goodness to us because, again, we were young, naive, maybe sometimes stupid, and we just kind of did what we thought was right at the moment in time, and God met us in the midst of our naivete, and good things resulted. I think one of my fears, though, just thinking it through, was just raising kids as a PK, you know, being in ministry. Would they love the Lord? Would they love the church? And I think that was always a little bit my fear. Would they be weird? Yeah, would they be weird? All of that. And we had seen some bad examples, and all it takes is 1 or 2 bad examples for you to go. And then everybody'd always ask you that question, hey, you're going into ministry, are you worried about how your kids are going to turn out? And again, I don't think we ever thought that through. We just kind of went with the flow, and again, God was incredibly gracious in that. But I think internally, just having seen some bad examples, it was one of my fears. I'm sure everybody who's a Christian parent grows up with a fear of, will their kids come to know Christ? Will they want to be involved in ministry and church and those kinds of things? But it felt even more focused when you were in ministry. Again, would your kids know Christ? Would the church experience push them toward Christ or away from Christ? So that was one of our concerns.
Yeah, and I think to piggyback that a little bit, I think one of our earlier struggles was as young parents, there's a lot of expectations of how we should raise our kids and what we should say yes to, what we should say no to, things that were just kind of projected on us, just being in the role of a leader of the church. You have lots of opinions of how you should raise your kids and what you should do. So I think that was initially, we really worked hard at like, okay, time out. We are going to decide what those boundaries are, what our rules are, how we're going to raise, and we're going to have to really just ignore the noise around us and just focus on what we think is best for our kids. And
Yeah,
our
and in all
family.
honesty, you were really good at that. I was a little bit more of a people pleaser. I think that when you get into ministry, you have a little bit of that. So, if the elders or somebody would say something at the church, I remember one time, our kids were on a swing on Sunday, which in the area we were at, that was just a no-no. You weren't to play or have fun on Sunday. And I remember her going, that's not who we're going to be. And again, feeling as though there was some freedom within that to go, okay, you're right. We don't always have to please people, and we don't always have to do what other people expect of people in ministry. And I actually think in the long run that kind of saved our children from some of that legalism and those kinds of things that can creep in that gives them a negative view of the church and of ministry and of Jesus ultimately. And I think Beth's
I didn't come from that
authenticity,
background where he did. And so he was always very sensitive to that. I wasn't as sensitive to it, so I think that really did kind of help balance us out a little bit in the sense that
very much so.
we were going to decide for ourselves and not what was expected from other people. Jeff was really good at never, ever, I can say with all assuredness, he never said, don't do this because of my job, or I'm the pastor, or because of the church, but finding a family identity because of the Moes family, this is how we're going to act, this is how we're going to behave, this is how we're going to believe, and not have it be from his job or his role. I would say that. And so many of our non-negotiables, if you will, rules, they developed over time with the age of the kids and the different ways you kind of move forward. Just with little kids, the rules are pretty basic, other than the fact that, we heard an illustration once where when a child enters the family, too often the parents are holding hands and they put the child in the middle and they revolve around that child. And you have to remember, no, they joined your family and they're linking with you in that circle because trust me, the best thing that happened to Abby was Lydia, because we fell into this spinning around our firstborn, and we tell her all the time, the best thing that happened to you was Lydia, because it forced us to kind of get that focus off
Yeah,
her.
it's a common theme we see today, and we could have been wrapped up into it, but this whole idea of child-centered parenting, where you sort of revolve around the child and all you do is everything, where they do become sort of this, added member to your family rather than the center of your family, and I think that's critical. I think the other thing I would add to, and we talked about this a little bit before, but we tried to make sure that whatever we expected of our kids, we modeled. So if we wanted them to love Jesus, we wanted them to be in the Word, we wanted them to be people of prayer, then we felt as though we always had to model that for them. And, the scripture that comes to mind is from Deuteronomy chapter 6, where Moses says, hey, listen, these things that I'm commanding you today are first of all to be written on your heart. So we always said, hey, listen, this has got to be lived out by us. So we can't expect something from our kids that we don't expect from ourselves. And then from there, I think we worked on it. I think one of our critical things always was, we would say often to each other, say what you mean and mean what you say. In other words, don't say something that you're not going to follow through on. Could be as simple as, hey, it's time to go to bed, put your pajamas on. And I see a parent say it 10, 12 times. And I always want to go, why? All you're doing is undermining your authority around your kids. So if you mean it's time to go to bed, you better follow through and take them to bed. If you mean it's time to put your pajamas on, you better follow through and make sure that they do. Because otherwise you're training your child below the standard and training them that you don't really mean what you say.
Yeah, I always would say to myself, and we would always say, stop and think before you say it.
Right.
Like, do I mean it? Is it time for bed? Do I really want them to put their pajamas on? Because if I do, then I need to engage in that, put your pajamas on, and make sure I'm following through and teaching them a big thing for us was immediate obedience, not on one, not on two, but when we say it, it's done. When you repeat yourself, you are training them to do it on the 5th time, or training them, oh, that's when they lose their temper. It's on the 7th time that you say it. Because too often we're letting, if you let your emotions decide when something happens, you might be in a good mood one day. You've got all the patience in the world, and then all of a sudden comes this day where you don't have the patience, and you're just creating a lot of confusion by repeating yourself or
And our
otherwise.
tagline was always, there's a standard. So you bring the child to the standard, not the standard to the child. And so we would always say, whatever the standard is, we just got to follow through on what that is.
So we took it letter of the law to model. Sometimes we were really, really in it. And there was somebody on your day off that just kept calling and calling. And he was basically looking for him everywhere. And before I answered the phone, I had to wait and give him enough time to get outside before I could say, nope, I'm sorry, he just left. Because I knew the kids were listening. I needed to, he's like, wait till I'm outside. And he'd go charging out the door. And he's like, you know what, I'm just gonna drive around the block real quick. Well, the guy was waiting for him at the end of the street, followed him home, and he's getting out of the car barefoot. And he's like, a little confused, but we stayed true to our word and we didn't lie. So probably one of our favorite things is what we call the interrupt rule. And again, that child isn't going to be the center of your attention. I think we've all been in a conversation with an adult, and when the child walks up, all of a sudden you're cut off and they're focusing on the child. And the interrupt rule was as simple as putting their hand on our hip and standing quietly or waiting quietly. You would put your hand on their hand, let them know, okay, I know you're there. As soon as there's a break in the conversation, I'll let you say what you need to say. And it just kind of helped them realize, nope, you're not the center of attention. We love you dearly, but you're going to respect the conversation and the people around you. And we had an incident in the car once. They literally relayed it up through the bucket seats in the van.
Yeah, child to child.
From child to child. So the older ones taught the younger ones. The younger ones, just the boys, they just did it because they saw it modeled by their sisters. So it really is an easy thing to teach.
Yeah.
You just practice it, and it's a good way to.
Yeah, and if I could brag on Beth for a moment, she was real good at, if we'd have to take the kids to somebody's house for dinner or those kinds of things, she was good at sort of rehearsing the situation. It was probably the teacher in her, but to say, hey, when somebody gives you a meal, what do you say? How do you respond when somebody asks you a question and they want to know, boy, you have a pretty dress on, or whatever it might be, how are you going to respond? She was real good about sort of rehearsing who we are. Again, this idea of the Moses, this is our standard. You always say thank you. You always, relay conversation to adults and those kinds of things in a good fashion. So she would often do these little role plays in the car on the way. It was fun for the kids, but yet at the same time, it kind of taught them, hey, when somebody, tells you you're pretty, how do you exchange a courtesy and how do you do those things right? I think the other thing that we were real good at, again, mostly led by Beth, but we had family night every Friday night. And I know that sounds weird, but when the kids were young, we kind of had a curriculum. There was a little bit of a Bible study. There were fun games that went along with it. But just simply saying, hey, listen, no friends from 6 to 8. We're going to have dinner together. We're going to then after that, you want to go play with friends. You going to go out for the night, whatever that might be. We did it even into their teenage years where we said, listen, this is always going to be what we do together. And as much as I'm sure they balked at moments and times, it just created something of family unity. We always prayed with the kids before bedtime. We always read Bible stories. And we spent the time. We turned the television off and we went to take them to bed. We didn't say, just get your butt in bed. We always went with them. And I just think those kinds of things, night after night, paid off good dividends where all of a sudden a little heart would be open after you prayed with them. Hey, can I tell you something? Can we talk about something? I always thought those were kind of just good parenting moments. But I don't think if we had been inconsistent, those kinds of things would have happened. But
Right.
I think just disciplining ourselves to turn off the television,
Yeah.
go to bed with them, pray with them, read the Bible story together, open them up, and then we could have some good conversation, even into teenage years, that I think kept an honesty of the relationship with Christ open rather than a rule bound or,
Right.
do this because that's what looks good for you. I think it became more personal in that way.
Yeah, and there's just simple things too as the kids get older that as a family, you're trying to push each other toward each other. So one of the things we never allowed, TVs in the bedroom. The grandparents always wanted to buy the kids a TV for
Yeah.
Christmas. We said no TV. So to this day, there is only the community TV because we're going to share the experience. We're going to be together in the same room. But
Yeah, and it's critical you say that. It's not that we were against TV.
No,
We weren't
we're
one of
not
those
against
families that
TVs.
didn't allow
Nope.
TV. It was just that you weren't going to go off into your bedroom and be by yourself. If
Right.
we were going to watch a show, we were going to watch it together. And I think
And
that
if we
created an interdependence.
had different
for them.
ideas of what
Yep.
we were watching, then you figure out how to
Yep.
come to an agreement to watch it together. So those are just some little things, other non-negotiables. You know what? You were going to be in midweek youth group, and you were going to be in church on Sunday morning. Those were truly non-negotiables for us, and if your basketball game started at 11, then you're going to early service in your uniform, because we're just going to make that commitment, and that's what we're going to do.
Yeah, and we raised our kids probably in a different day and
Yes,
age. But we
for
would
sure.
often say to the coach, these are our commitments. The kids are going to be in youth group, we're going to be in. So they understood that. And then if, for
Mm-hmm. Yep.
some reason that was a problem for them, it never was.
Yeah.
But then.
That's not to say we were perfect at it either. It's,
Right.
obviously there's circumstances and different situations, but the overall arching commitment, we're in church on Sunday morning, you're in youth group midweek, to try to let them know, and we stayed pretty committed
Yep.
to that. But times have changed. I see it. I go back to Galatians, do not grow weary in well-doing. And sometimes, there would be many times, I'd have to literally stop and say that to myself and like putting on my boots and like, okay, I'm gonna do this. The right thing isn't always gonna be the easy thing. And I think a lot of parents need to embrace the authority they have as a parent, that your child will still love you. I think we're so caught up in wanting to be the friend to the child and not the parent or the leader to the child that we're giving up too much control in that department. Yeah, and hopefully, and I know not every household has it, that you have a united front. I think that's something, even if one of us kind of disagreed, we never disagreed about something in front of the kids. We would talk about it later, like, gosh, I think that was too harsh of a punishment. I think that's not a realistic expectation. We didn't do it in front of each other. Yeah, it's just,
Yeah, and I'd add to
hard.
it that, we may have some theological training and but we have no advantage over other parents. Again, our kids were never impressed with degrees or what I did for a living, and we never treated them that way. We were very much, John and Jane Doe. We were normal people that our kids just cared about whether or not it was lived out in our lives. And I always say to people, listen, the most important thing you're going to do in your life, besides marriage, is going to be raising kids. And so I would give yourself wholly to it. I just think, and I could be in this at points in time, there's a lot of lazy parenting. And you got to remind yourself every day, I'm either sort of adding value to my kids' life and pushing them towards Jesus, or I'm taking the lazy way out. And Beth was just good at calling us all of the time to a little bit higher standard as parenting, recognizing how valuable. Now, sitting where we are now, looking back, I go, man, it was so worth it. The things we sacrificed, the things we did away with, the extra time we put into it where we wished we could have just been doing our own thing. I think sitting in our seat now, watching our kids raise kids, I go, man, it was worth every bit, but
Yeah.
it takes
And our time was
discipline and
different.
time.
We didn't have a phone in our hands to look at,
Yep.
to distract us. We were able, the circumstances were better for us to be present.
Yep.
Where I think that is another layer of challenge for so many young adults now. But I also need to say, one, we were not perfect. If you knew our kids, you know they weren't perfect. There were,
Yes.
they made missteps, we made missteps. But I think I can honestly say one of the things we probably did pretty well, if we made the mistake or if they did, we taught them the process of how to reconcile, how to ask for forgiveness. We would ask for forgiveness when we did something
we
wrong. If we
modeled it.
lost our temper, we'd come together in those situations. And I also want to speak to the parent who did all the things we did, who checked all the boxes, who had their family dinners and commitments to church, et cetera. And maybe their child doesn't know the Lord now, or yet, I should say. So I wish there was a magic formula and you check the boxes and you're going to end up with a child who loves the Lord and follows the Lord. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. So I want to be careful that
That's a good point.
we don't have this magic formula. But I think we are called to do certain things.
I do, and I think, again, if you're just working with the odds here, so to speak, you know, you want to do everything you can so you can sit back and say, hey, God, I did what you required of me, and I think we can do that, again, not perfectly, and certainly we messed up, and our kids messed up, but I think when you can do that and sit back and go, okay, Lord, it's up to you, then I think that's a good
But there's a lot
place.
of learning in the mess-ups.
Incredibly so.
You were better at that than I was. You're like, gosh, aren't you glad that happened? I'm like, really? They're like, yeah, because they're still in our home, and we have a chance to teach them through this and coach them and bring them to the other side of it. So,
Right, and besides prison, our kids made every mistake every other kid makes. And I think it's in those moments where, you know, at least your relationship with the Lord either becomes genuine, hey, there's forgiveness but consequences, or there's harsh and you embarrass me and what's wrong with you? And so we tried never to do that. You name it, we had it. And we just tried to walk through it with as much grace as God had given to me and Beth in our own lives to walk in that. And I think some of that authenticity helped in building a right relationship with the Lord. Yeah, I think the first emotion it brings to me is unworthiness, because I know I wasn't the perfect parent. And sometimes when I look at my kids, I go, man, I did a whole lot better than what I deserve in terms of parenting. And again, maybe that's more Beth than anything. But, you know, I look at our kids, I go, you know what, you turned out a whole lot better than I did. And so there's a sense of unworthiness in there. But I'd also say, sitting in our seat now at our age, looking back, I go, there was no greater investment. You know, nothing more worthwhile for me in life than to really be devoted to that. In some respects, I'm kind of sad that it's over. I'm kind of sad, even though you want this, that they're out of the house and they're on their own and they're married and they're productive and they love the Lord. But those were just joyous times for us. And now seeing them come back into the house with their kids and see them live it out in their own lives, it makes me smile.
yeah. And the days are fleeting. I know you know the days are long, the years are short, but boy,
Yeah.
it is a blink. So in those tired moments, just,
We would do that to each other
Yeah.
often, wouldn't we? Of let's get up and let's
I
do
know, we
this.
would look at just do like a big sigh, like, okay,
Yep, got to follow through.
let's do this. We could do
'Cause
it.
it's tiring.
It is.
Yeah.
If you heard several things that you're like, oh, I should do that, I should do this, I should do that, I think just pick one thing at a time. Like, you know what? Here's one area I need to change. And I think it's a constant reevaluation too then. Making that change, there's always room to decide, like, I need to be better at this. I mean, I still do that. I'm like, yeah, I need to put my phone down more. I need to be more intentional with my quiet time. So you need to reevaluate a lot and not get too discouraged that you just don't do it, because it's not going to be easy.
Agreed, and I agree with everything you just said, hon. I would say this, though. I think it starts because you're probably going to change things for the kids. So I think, and we tried to model this, but to go to your kids and say, hey, can I be honest with you? We haven't done what we really wanted to before the Lord. We haven't, disciplined. We haven't modeled. We have whatever it might be that you want to work on. I think it always starts with just going to your kids and being honest. I think you model for them. Hey, can you forgive mom and dad? We, for the past few years, have not done, and things are going to change. I just want you, not in a harsh way, but I just want you to know we're going to try to do better. And then I think Beth's advice is good. Pick one, and then when you get that down, pick another, because you can't change everything overnight. It's sort of like
Layering.
turning a ship. You're going to slam everybody into the wall, so you don't want to do that. I think you just make little navigational turns as a parent and decide, I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do this. So I think it starts with saying what you mean and meaning what you say.
Mean what you say. Yeah, we used a curriculum when we were early on. We came across a curriculum, Growing Kids God's Way, and we taught that curriculum, and every time the kids would see that book come back out again, that we're going to do another class, they knew that we were going to ramp it back up again because things do slide, and you do get loose in some areas, so they're like, oh no, here we go, and they started to know kind of some of those navigational turns that we were going to make. So it's kind of one of those things. I don't know if you ever arrive.
Right, you don't.
I think you just have to always look, reflect.
Yeah, and it's fair to say, if you're out there and you've raised kids, that we have regret too. So we don't look back and go, wow. There's just areas, and I think you'll always have this as a parent where, God, I wished I'd done better. I wished I didn't blow it in this area, whatever it might be. So I think you'll always, live with some regret, but I trust you can look back and go, I wasn't perfect, but man.
Kids appreciate honesty and sincerity.
Agreed.
And if you can go to them honestly, sincerely, and be honest about where you wanted to do better, they're so forgiving. They are so forgiving.
Very much so.